Welcome learners. In this session, we will look at the role of East India Company in collecting systematic information about the people of India. With the rapid expansion of East India Company's territories in the last decade of 18th century, the British became increasingly aware of the bewildering variety of peoples, histories, political forms, systems of land tenure and religious practices which were to be found in the subcontinent. They realized that the haphazard report of sociological information must be more systematized and supported by field surveys, through which better and more accurate information can be acquired. The British had some unsystematic knowledge of Indian society through their direct experience, such as Munros in the land settlements in Salem district in Madras, Malcolm's in his diplomatic duties in Mysore with the Marathas, Todd's in his diplomatic duties in Rajasthan, Elphinstone's in his diplomatic and administrative responsibilities in Maharashtra, as well as dozens of other officials. A few colonialists also collected systematic information about the Indian society. As we have seen in the previous session, William Tennant and Henry Thomas Coolbrooke systematically collected information about the Indian society. Along with them, Dr. Francis Buchanan has also studied the various aspects of Indian society systematically. In this session, we shall learn about Dr. Francis Buchanan's role in collecting systematic information about the Indian society, Buchanan's line of work, caste system and its origin in India. First, we will have a look into Dr. Buchanan. Dr. Francis Buchanan was one of the earliest and most famous contributors who collected information from society. Buchanan was born in Scotland in 1762. He had an excellent education in Glasgow and Edinburgh and became a physician. In 1794, he joined the East India Company's service as an assistant surgeon. He made several trips to India as an assistant surgeon representing East India Company. He initially began to collect and report on botanical and zoological specimens. His work caught the attention of William Roxburgh, a great student of Indian botany. Roxburgh recommended Buchanan to Lord Clive, Governor of Madras, and Lord Wellesley, the Governor General. Late in 1799, they wanted a survey of Mysore and the company's territories, which were acquired after the Fourth Mysore War. Wellesley instructed Buchanan to collect information on agriculture, nature of tenures, natural products of the country, manufacturing, commerce, mines and quarries, and the climate. In addition, Wellesley said, the condition of inhabitants regarding their food, clothing, habitations will engage your attention, and also the different sects and tribes of people will merit your observance. You will likewise note their laws, customs, etc. to be worthy. Buchanan's report was published as a diary in which he notes under a particular date what he observed or was told about the wide range of topics for which he was sent to obtain information. He was a keen observer and his descriptions of technology, historic sites and plants are excellent. He also collected data on ethnographic accounts of various castes, their subdivisions and occupations by interviewing members of multiple castes. The court of directors of the company ordered Buchanan to survey as they wanted a statistical survey of the country. Buchanan was engaged in his work for 7 years and completed folio volumes of the manuscripts, the results of which were not published completely. Later, Robert Montgomery Martin edited the materials, the history, antiquities, topography and statistics of Eastern India, and published in 3 volumes in London in 1838. Martin's volumes cover the northern part of Bengal, the districts of Dinajpur and Rangpur, the southern part of Assam, the portions of Bihar south of Ganges, and the Gorakhpur district in Uttar Pradesh. In the 20th century, the Bihar and Orissa Research Society and the Bihar government undertook to edit and publish the full version of Buchanan's reports related to Bihar. 5 volumes on 4 districts were published, and in addition 3 volumes of Buchanan's field journal, which give his itinerary and incidental notes, were also published. Buchanan's Bihar materials differ from the Mysore survey both in quantity and quality. He has given extensive statistical data on the various aspects of the houses, health statistics, statistics on types of farm labourers, size of families, types of dwellings, attempts at statistically estimating standard of living, and the numbers engaged in various trades and crafts in the cities and the districts. In addition to the statistical material, there are incredibly well organized and detailed description of education and land tenure and normative descriptions of the wide range of customs. Buchanan organized his material under 5 main headings. The first, topography and antiquities, the people, natural products, agriculture, commerce, arts and manufacturers. Under the heading the people, he discussed demography. Using statistics based on interviews with the native officials and various registers, which he frequently had spot checks. He paid a great deal of attention to the people's standard of living and constantly tried to measure income and consumption. He described the various sects of the Hindus and Muslims found and their ritual and theological differences. His discussion of caste was weighted to the description of their occupations. Most of his writing about the ethnography of Bihar was presented in comparison to Bengal, which was more familiar to him and his readers. Buchanan's work in Bengal and Bihar was considered the forerunner of the efforts taken by the British in India to collect, collate and publish official and scholarly detailed information about physical, cultural and sociological aspects of every district in India. His works peaked with the Imperial Gazetteer of India, published in the early 20th century. Buchanan's line of work. In the 1840s, Buchanan's district manuals and histories were published. In the 1870s, the statistical account of Bengal, edited by Hunter, was published. In 1872, the Census of India was published on a systematic and all India basis, through which a whole new body of material on Indian society became available. In North India, the successive waves of revenue settlements produced a great deal of material on the relation of people to the land and the organization of Indian rural society. An implicit view of the nature of Indian society and particularly the caste system began to emerge. Caste system and its origin in India. The official view of caste was very much related to how the British collected information about the caste system. In the first instance, a caste was a thing, an entity which was concrete and measurable. Above all, it had definable characteristics like endogamy, commensality rules, fixed occupation, and standard ritual practices. Assistants were sent into the field with a questionnaire which could be quantified for reports and surveys. In order to learn about the caste of particular district, this was done either by sitting on one's horse or in the shade of the village banyan tree as an adjunct of one's official duty. The recorded information was collated so that the Lohars, the Ahirs, the Mahishas or the Okaligas could be pigeonholed, and by this one could describe the caste group. This way of thinking about a particular caste was helpful to the administrator because it gave illusion of knowing the people. He did not have to differentiate too much among individual Indians. A man was a Brahman and the Brahmins had specific characteristics. He was conservative. His intelligence was superior to that of any other race. His chief fault has been extreme exclusiveness. The 1901 census of Bengal found over 205 castes and tribes, over 25,000 in population in Bihar and Orissa. In Bengal, there were 450 groups from 1 to 2 crores and 20 lakhs. Half of them did not have over 1,000 members. India was seen as a collection of castes. The particular picture was different in any given time and place, but India was a sum of its parts and the parts were castes. The official census was based on the view of caste. Therefore, it saw the system as one of the separate castes and their customs. In order to understand caste, one had to develop classification to order the data. H. Risley gave the most famous classification. He reduced 2000 odd castes that the census had found in India to 7 types: tribal, functional, sectarian, caste formed by crossing, national caste, caste formed by migration, and caste formed by changing customs. After that, caste had been counted and classified, and their customs and characteristics recorded. The gnawing question remaining was, why did this caste exist? What were its origins? In sociology, origins were taken not as a direct historical question. Unlike the early Orientalists, the official ethnographers of caste, although they recognized the Brahminical theory as embodied in the text, did not think the texts were documents that could be traced the history of caste. By origin, they instead meant a comprehensive functional question. British scholars and ethnographers view on the origin of caste in India. Nesfield regarded caste as originating in the division of labor, and occupation was the central determining factor in the system. H. Risley argued for a racial origin of the caste. Ibbotson saw the primary impetus to the formation of caste in tribal origins. Crook and others came out for more eclectic theories of origin. This eclecticism reaches its final form with the last of the British official ethnographers and census commissioners, J. H. Hutton. He compiled a list of 14 more apparent factors which have been indicated as probably contributing to the emergence and development of the caste system. The administrative official view of caste was an outgrowth of how information was collected and also reflected anthropological interest and theories of the period 1870 to 1910. The reflection of contemporary anthropological theory can be seen in the general theoretical books written about the caste system. W. Crookes, The Tribe and Caste of Northwestern Provinces and Oudh, published in 4 volumes, Calcutta in 1896, is an example. He has given the accounts of the caste which are arranged alphabetically. A good deal of space is devoted to marriage rules and subdivisions of the caste, usually termed exogamous sections. These are listed by name with customs of particular sections. For example, whether they worship a specific deity or have a distinctive marriage ceremony. There are descriptions of life cycle rites for most castes. If mythological origin stories are known about the caste or the exogamous sections, they are recorded in it. There is a brief description of the occupation traditionally followed by the caste. Statistics on the geographic distribution of the caste and its significant sections taken from the 1891 census are presented in tabular form. The data and their organization implicity reflect the work of Morgan, McLennan, Lubbock, Taylor, Stark and Fraser. These men were concerned with the use of customs, for example, marriage by capture, polyandry or the levirate, to infer something about the origin of culture, and they termed it civilization. Similarly, religious practices were utilized as desperate bits of information to develop stages of development of religion. The customs were reported and studied out of their context as hard fact that could be compared and classified as the stage of development. The compilers of the handbook and gazetteers, the recorders of the proverbs, myths and practices reported in Punjab notes, enquiries or in North Indian notes and queries were contributing to an antiquarian interest in Indian society, but to the eventual solution of general anthropological problems. In 1901, an official effort was made to establish an ethnographic survey of India which could develop as a part of the census of 1901. The expense and effort connected with the ethnographic survey were justified on the following grounds. Because Britishers realized that India is a vast storehouse of social and physical data that was needed to be recorded in order to contribute to the solution of the problems which are being approached in Europe with the aid of material, much of which is inferior in quality to the facts readily accessible in India. The need to collect this ethnographic information was considered pressing because India's primitive belief and usages would be wholly destroyed or transformed, another late Victorian justification for ethnography. Finally, the survey was justified for the legislation, judicial procedure, famine relief, sanitation and dealing with epidemic disease. Almost every form of executive action, an ethnographic survey of India and the record of the customs of the people is as necessary an incident of good administration as a cadastral survey of the land and a record of the rights of its tenants. One cannot help but wonder what use of knowledge of marriage customs or a cephalic index would be to an administrator. The final question connected with the official view of caste was its effect on Indian society. The history of British rule in India is to some extent to be seen in an unanticipated consequence of its actions. With the recent increasing work on 18th and 19th century social history, for example, the result of Ronald Inden on Bengali Kayasthas and Brahmins, Karen Leonard's work on Hyderabadi Kayasthas and Robert Hartgrave's work on South Indian Nadars. A much different view of caste and the caste system are beginning to emerge. In some castes in the 19th century, as in many rural areas today, was the endogamous unit, not the exogamous unit, which the administrator thought of the effective unit in the system. Through the changes brought about by literacy, aspirations for upward mobility and the new geographic and occupational mobility, the endogamous unit began to take in broader importance. In the urban environment or the modernized segment of the society, Indians increasingly identified themselves with endogamous groups and the caste name Brahman, Kayasthas, Nadars, etc. In this process of the census, the constant need for government applications to identify oneself by caste and the application of varying laws to different castes all seem to have played a part. In the census of 1901, H. Risley, who was census superintendent, classified caste based on social precedents as recognized by native public opinion. Risley argued that although this turned out to be very troublesome in the terms of argument and petitions submitted by Indians claiming different status than had been granted by the provincial census commissioners, it indicated that this indeed was a successful classification. Risley also noted that most of the petitions were in English, indicating that educated classes were still very much within the caste system. The caste survey affected Indian society by the changes, which included the caste sabha movements, expansion of marriage networks, establishment of caste hostels at colleges, as well as the petitioning of census commissioners for change in rank accorded a caste in the census tables. To conclude, in this session, a detailed description of the systematic information about Indian society was studied from the Buchanan's view. Though a surgeon, he has done several surveys using interview and observation methods. His work has provided a space to analyze from where the caste system had its origin. Later, several ethnographers view on the origin of caste system was explained and the gradual installation of caste among the Indian people were discussed. With the origin of the caste system, the colonial perspective on the village is to be learnt in the next session. Thank you.